Hello, and welcome back to the Alexander Society podcast. My name is Tim, here to reignite your religious trauma, and here with me is my co-host Derek, who has been sipping on some Kool-Aid. How are you, Derek?
I don't want to sip on this Kool-Aid. Please don't make me sip on this Kool-Aid, Mr. Jones. Please. Oh my God. You're bringing back all of the, it's not just going to be religious trauma for me. This is going to be all the trauma of actually listening to that Jonestown audio when I was a fucking sophomore in high school, which was one of the worst mistakes of my life.
If it's not evidently clear what our topic is right away, we are covering the infamous Jonestown Massacre, or Jim Jones is our subject this week.
Yeah, this is going to be a nightmare, people. Oh man.
So, Derek, how are you doing this week?
Hey, you know what? I was actually doing pretty great up until around this afternoon. Um, I started a new job this week. I've been doing training at a new job. I'm going to be getting a whole bunch more money.
Hell yeah, brother.
I started a new hobby recently. I've been having some fun with that.
That's going to take that whole bunch more money?
Oh yeah, all the extra money I'm making at this new job is immediately going into Warhammer miniatures. So
Falling down that pitfall, I say as a Gunpla builder.
yeah, but Tim, how are you doing?
I'm doing... So, Derek, what are you drinking tonight?
Oh, what am I drinking? So since I'm not, I usually get my beer and my liquor from a store by my work, but I don't work there anymore, so I had to find a new place. Still looking at places. The place I went to this time was pretty short on the kind of craft beers that I usually like. They did have...
I mean, we both kind of prefer craft beers just because we like highlighting local places, or like sweat of your brow, like we're not supporting corporations kind of shit.
Yeah, and also because like tailgate beer, unless it's like...
It's usually trash.
Yeah, it's usually trash. It all tastes exactly the same, unless it's like Mexican, like a Mexican lager, like Dos Equis or Corona.
But the Mexican ones that are sold in like my Walmart, for the most part, are all taste the same too.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, you have two brands of mainstream beer. You have you either have Bud Light or you have Corona, and
You have American piss water or Mexican piss water.
yes, exactly. But I did find one. It's from Wisconsin. It's called Lost Lake. I don't know if this is actually like a craft brewery or a microbrew or anything like that, because it is Wisconsin. That's where like most of the big brands. So this might be a subsidiary or something. But it's Lost Lake. It's an amber pilsner, and goddamn, is this stuff good? Oh my god, it is so fucking...
You had that look on your face that you either really liked it or really hated it, and I couldn't guess which when you first sipped on it.
I love this stuff. I don't think I've had a beer from Wisconsin that I haven't really liked, at least as far as like smaller breweries go. And this is just keeping that trend. It's fantastic. It's great stuff. On the flip side of that coin, I have decided my liquor, I do not like this stuff.
You were all hyped for the meme.
I was hyped for the meme. I had very low expectations for the flavor, so I'm not disappointed about it. I'm not surprised by it, but it is bad. But when I saw it on the shelf, I had to get it. I felt compelled to. I had no choice. It is...
The only thing that could have themed this better for Thanksgiving, because you remember Thanksgiving, we all have those cheap like pops, and there was always a root beer, there was always a Coke, there was always a Sprite knockoff. Root beer fills right in.
Yeah, this is a Smirnoff root beer float flavored vodka. 30% triple distilled. It's Smirnoff, your standard stuff. It just tastes like Smirnoff, but with artificial root beer flavoring that is way too sweet. It is extremely sweet. It's not creamy. It's just sweet.
Yep.
And it is not good. It's bad. It's really bad. Tim, what are you drinking?
So I found this. This is the first time I found from them. They're called Stone Cloud Brewing Co. And they're in Oklahoma. It doesn't say where in Oklahoma they're from, but Stone Cloud. I didn't look them up yet. Oh, OKC. It's brewed in OKC.
Oh, another Oklahoma City. I'm shocked.
How most of our breweries are in Oklahoma City. I'm not gonna lie. Oklahoma City and Tulsa are like littered with craft beer breweries.
Every other building in these fucking cities in Oklahoma are craft breweries. It's insane.
It just speaks to our southern drunk.
Yeah. And most of them are pretty good, to be fair.
Oh, I'm not gonna lie, yeah, 100%.
Drink Angry Scotsman.
So my beer is called Watermelon Slice Party Shirt. It's a watermelon sour. So then this bottle just screamed at me. And if I get this to you, I need the bottle back because this is going on the shelf with the bottles we're gonna be collecting from the podcast. It is Espinita Tequila, and it's 100% agave tequila. I love tequila. We've already been over this. It's white tequila, but the bottle is just beautiful. Derek already saw it, right?
Oh, it's a gorgeous bottle, yeah. It's not gimmicky. It's just a really pretty bottle.
It is like... So, getting on to the rules. Like I said, this week's topic is Jim Jones. So our first rule is what, Derek?
Rule number 1. Anytime Jones does something quote-unquote good to further his own agenda, we're going to take 1 sip.
And then our second rule is anytime Jones does something shitty but justifies it with religion, we're going to take 3 sips.
And rule number 3. Anytime someone claims to have spiritual powers, we're going to take a shot.
Yes, and unfortunately that's probably going to come up a lot because at least 2 characters I know claim to have powers, but that was just brief reading. So you ready for our first shot, Derek?
Sure, let's do it. Prost.
Cheers. So Derek, you mentioned you already know a little bit of Jim Jones. What do you remember?
Yeah, so I know that Jim Jones kind of began his career as like a progressive sort of socialist preacher who was really involved in like a lot of civil rights stuff, and he used his public profile to garner a sort of following that slowly morphed into like a
borderline cult, if not a full-on cult.
Yeah, like a pseudo-socialistic cult with him as like the messianic figure that eventually just devolved into like this these paranoid conspiracies about government attempts to silence them that eventually led to their decision to move to was it New Guinea?
Yeah, I think it's New Guinea. It
was in South America, right?
Yeah, it was somewhere in South America. It's Guyana. It didn't say New Guinea, but I think it's New Guinea.
No, yeah, wherever. And eventually, after a Senate investigation, I think some sort of congressional investigation kind of began, and it ended with like I think it was a congressman that went and ended up being assassinated by members of the cult, and then after that, Jones basically ordered his entire like 900-person commune to drink cyanide-laced Kool-Aid or Flavor Aid, and all of them were killed.
I thought there was a few survivors. I don't think everyone died.
Yeah, I think there were a few survivors, but
I think it said 900 people died in the 900.
Yeah, somewhere like that. That's the broad strokes I can remember off the top of my head. I'm sure a lot of that information is wrong, but
it's not necessarily wrong. It's just more like surface level description. You're pretty spot on. So our topic is, of course, James Warren Jones, better known as Jim Jones. He's considered a mass murderer. By technical definition, I wouldn't think he qualifies, but I get why they call him a mass murderer.
Morally, I think it's a useless distinction, but
yes, it is a useless distinction. But he was more like a cult leader that engaged in a group suicide pact. Essentially, is what I saw it as.
Yeah, like there's some practical distinctions that's important to keep in mind because to like truly understand what actually happened. But morally speaking, I think calling him a mass murderer is not off the mark.
Yes, semantics wise, there's no point in like distincting it, to be honest. Like, yes, he is 100% a mass murderer. So he was born on May 13th, 1931 in Crete, Indiana. I think that's pronounced Crete. Yeah, it looks like it's pronounced Crete. To James Thurman Jones and Leanna Putman.
James Thurman Jones is such a powerful name.
He feels like a good old-fashioned Baptist preacher. That's like a Baptist preacher's name.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't know why I feel like that, but it does. Jones was Irish and Welsh descent, and his mother claimed Cherokee ancestry, but there was no proof of this.
Oh, this is like the mid-century. Everybody started claiming they had Cherokee ancestry at that time.
To be fair, it's like, Cherokee ancestry is all over at least the Midwest. Like almost anyone in Oklahoma could probably erroneously claim their Cherokee and not really be erroneous.
Yeah, that's fair, but like on the other side, like everybody that I have ever known has a story from their grandmother about being descended from like a Cherokee princess or something like that.
Yeah, I don't believe even like 90% of them. I don't believe. Jones's father was a disabled World War I veteran who had breathing difficulties due to chemical warfare.
Oh, that's interesting.
His father augmented his disability income with helping out with neighborhood road repair projects because his pension were not enough. You know, like a lot of the time, what veterans who ended up having to be disabled got was not enough to support their families, unfortunately.
Oh yeah, go back to our episode on Smedley Butler to find out how World War I veterans were treated.
Yeah, great time to plug that. His father's illness led to a lot of financial difficulties that led to a lot of marital problems, as financial difficulties almost always do.
Yeah, that'll do it.
They got evicted during the Great Depression when they couldn't make their mortgage payments, but their family helped them out by purchasing a shack for them to live in the nearby town of Lynn.
Man, the old stories from the Depression are really, really bizarre. Like, just
rough too.
Yeah, really rough. Like, man, those people had hard. Like, this is the people who are growing up in this generation. Like, once they hit their 20s and they get
yeah, definitely. So in this new shack that they were purchased from family members, there was no plumbing or electricity. So they probably had a shit bucket, as our buddies on Small Town Murder would say.
Yeah, bring back the shit bucket. Hey, whomst amongst us hasn't had a shit bucket?
The family tried to earn an income through farming, but Jones's father's health deteriorated again, and they didn't really have adequate food, and they had to rely on their extended family. And sometimes they had to just forage out in the forest and fields to supplement their diets. So, like, they were borderline feral, the kids in that family.
Hell yeah, bring back hunter-gatherer. Let's go. This is where...
Not this way. We should bring it back, but not this fucking way.
This is where we finally get our important convergence of Jim Jones and Ted Kaczynski. we finally synthesized two of the greatest revolutionary forces in American history. Let's fucking go, people. We're getting it done.
Apparently, multiple sources have said that Jones's mother had, quote, no natural maternal instincts. So she frequently neglected Jones. And then when Jones started attending school, his extended family threatened to cut off their financial assistance unless his mom got a job.
All right. I'm starting to see some see some links in this chain starting to be formed.
Oh, obviously. That forced her to be away further, even more. And Jones's father during this was hospitalized a lot. So Jones didn't see either of his parents a lot. Because I'm assuming when his mom wasn't working, she was with her husband in the hospital.
And even when she was around, she was kind of like treating him more like, an annoying pet that she didn't want. That kind of thing.
Probably.
Yeah, like having a mom who hates you and a dad who coughs up his lungs tainted with mustard gas is, while living in a shack without plumbing in the middle of the Great Depression. That's a
fun thought.
Yeah, that's a convergence of awful societal failures that creates a cult leader.
Honestly, I'm surprised he was actually able to like pull himself up that way to become a cult leader with this kind of upbringing, that he rose to that much prominence.
Yeah, I'm surprised that he took the civil rights activist path to get to his cult thing instead of the.
Honestly, it's like a little impressive. As much as I begrudgingly want to say that, someone with this kind of background has every right to go down the I just want to burn everything down, don't do the false pretenses bullshit kind of thing. Like even if it was all a front, like it's kind of impressive he went down the route he did rather than just like, like a full on just like anarchist destroy it all kind of mentality. Although he was cared for by his aunts and uncles who lived nearby, Jones was often seen wandering the streets of the town, sometimes naked.
Okay, I'm starting to like him. I could get on board with that.
Apparently, Jones was cared for by the female residents of Lynn, and they frequently invited him into their houses to give him food, clothing, and other gifts. Literally, it takes a village kind of mentality, especially in these kind of circumstances.
This is bleak. This is bad. Like, nothing good could have possibly come out of this.
And then we get into his religious roots. Myrtle Kennedy, the wife of the Nazarene Church's pastor, developed a special attachment to Jones. She gave Jones I'm assuming it was his first Bible, and encouraged him to study it, teaching him to follow the Holiness Code. I've never heard of the Holiness Code.
I haven't either. Sounds like some Protestant nonsense.
The Holiness Code is a Christian movement that emerged chiefly within the 19th century Methodism, and to a lesser extent followed other traditions such as Quakerism, Adventism, and Restorationism. The movement is historically distinguished by its emphasis on the doctrine of second work of grace.
Okay, so it sounds like some...
And generally called the entire sanctification or Christian perfection, and by the belief that Christians should be free of sin. For the holiness of the movement, the term perfection signifies completeness of Christian character. It's freedom from all sin and possessions of all the graces of the Spirit, complete in kind. A number of evangelical Christian denominations, parachurch organizations, and movements emphasize these beliefs as central doctrine.
Okay, so he's kind of becoming to his like religious awakening through this doctrine of like on the one side, like Christian expression through faith and good works, which would lead to like a sort of activist approach to his Christianity. But then
this makes a whole lot of sense where like that he's going to take the route he does. This is where it's kind of showing like, yes, he's definitely going to have his activism culty movement.
Yeah, because on the other side of that coin is that emphasis on like perfection and freedom from sin, which is going to make a pretty that's going to manifest as a pretty strict religious dogma. That an emphasis on individual perfection and freedom from sin. That's going to create some weird psychology that's going to make people probably a little too into it, if that makes sense. I don't know exactly how to word it, but.
Yes. Yeah, I get what you're saying, even if I can't enunciate it just like you. As Jones grew older, he attended services from multiple churches in Lynn. So, like, he went to multiple churches each week and was baptized by several of them. So this is the kind of guy that didn't get drawn up by he didn't get bogged down by the like different sects of religion.
Okay, if he had been less interested in politics, he would have just founded Life Church.
Probably. As a child, he developed the idea that he wanted to be a preacher and began to practice preaching in private. His mother claimed she was disturbed when she caught him imitating the pastor of local apostolic Pentecostal church. Apostolic. Apostolic Pentecostal church. And she unsuccessfully tried to prevent him from attending the services. While neighbors were sympathetic for Jones's circumstances, they reported that he was a weird child with his obsession with religion and death. He had an obsession with death.
Completely unsurprising.
No, not at all. He regularly visited the Lynn Town's casket manufacturer and held mock funerals for roadkill. One of his neighbors stated that Jones had killed a cat for one of these funerals with a knife.
Oh, no.
That's one of our quote-unquote deadly three triangle. Have we ever talked about this before, Derek? It's been disproven, but, like, it's interesting how often it shows up.
I think we've talked about it. I think the other two are obsession with fire and bedwetting.
Yes. It is animal torturing / killing. Sometimes you don't have to cross the line into killing. And bedwetting, not necessarily just bedwetting. It's bedwetting late in life. Like, past, like, the ages of, like, 5 or 6. Beyond where you're supposed to be bedwetting. And then, basically, arsonist personality traits.
Let's be honest, though. He probably didn't have a bed to wet.
Probably not.
Yeah, that's the reddest red. Okay, that's why he got into socialism, is because he already had all the red flags. Makes sense.
Jones claimed he could fly, so is that our shot or is that our sip? That's our shot.
Woo! That's shot, yeah. Hell yeah.
Cheers.
Prost.
This is the first time I've liked a liquor warmer.
Yeah, tequila is one of those I still prefer it.
I have personally never come across a tequila that is better warmer.
Well, not better.
None of my drinks I've liked better warmer.
Not better warmer, but like still pretty good warm. Okay, so kid preaches to himself, kills animals to hold funerals for them, and is now telling people he can fly.
Yeah, he even tried to prove it.
Yep.
He leapt off a roof to demonstrate his abilities and broke his arms.
Yep, saw that coming.
In spite of this, he kept claiming he had the ability to fly. He even at times would, we're not counting this as another shot, put other children into life-threatening situations and tell them he was guided by the angel of death.
This kid is
fucking delusional.
How old is he at this point? He's still like...
It doesn't give an age.
Because this is like, it's like pathological lying mixed with like a conscious delusion of grandeur.
Oh, 100%.
But it's like a conscious delusion. Like it seems like he knows, like, sure, he can't actually believe that he can really fly, but he wants people to think he can. Although I'm talking about a kid here, so I might just be thinking about it too much. Like I have met people who, when they were kids, tried to convince people they could fly by jumping off of roofs. That's a shockingly common thing for some reason.
Apparently, he also committed countless sacrilegious pranks. He claimed he had stolen the Pentecostal minister's Bible and had covered Acts 2:38 with cow manure.
Oh, we're going to pull up that.
You want to pull that up for me?
Yeah. Chapter 2, verse 38?
Yes.
Acts... Okay. Peter replied, "Repent and be baptized, every one of you, in the name of Jesus Christ for the forgiveness of your sins, and you will receive the gift of the Holy Spirit."
And our boy Jim Jones covered cow shit on it.
What? But why? What message was that?
He also claimed to have replaced the holy water at a Catholic church with... Can you guess what he replaced it with?
I don't... Piss?
His own piss.
His own... Okay, yep. Oh, man, controversial take. I don't know if I like Jim Jones.
No shit.
I know that's gonna ruffle some feathers, but I'm not a big fan of this guy so far. Hopefully he grows up and becomes an outstanding, productive member of society.
So, as one would assume, Jones had difficulty making friends.
No shit.
A biographer suggests that the reason why he did all this bullshit was because he couldn't make friends. He started stealing. He used profanity a lot, even more than I do.
Oh yeah, he probably wanted attention. That's all of this.
Can you guess how he greeted people with? He had 2 known sayings.
I'm expecting the word fuck to be involved in at least one of them.
If it was me, yes. But it was not. His first one was "Good morning, you son of a bitch," or "Hello, you dirty bastard." And Jones's mom would beat his ass with a leather belt.
If he had been born like...
If he had been born modernly, he just would have been an edgy teen.
Yeah, like 80 years... If Jim Jones had been born 80 years later, he'd just be the kid wearing the Ahegao
T-shirt.
Sweatshirt to school.
I can see it now, Jim Jones in a Higo hoodie.
Yeah, getting pulled aside by his teacher saying, listen, 2 things. 1, you've got to take that sweatshirt off. 2, you really have to take a shower.
Yes, he would be the deal. The fedora doesn't wear deodorant guy.
The worst trumpet player in the section in his high school marching band, who's literally only in there because he knows that people are annoyed when he plays the trumpet.
Yes. He also developed a very distinct interest in social doctrines. He read Hitler's works, Stalin's works, Marx's works, and Gandhi's works.
Okay.
He would even tell his wife that Mao Zedong was his hero.
Huh. All right. So...
He also studied political systems, as would probably be evident since he studied Hitler and Stalin and Marx and Gandhi.
Okay, you know what I just thought of, what this made me think of? There's this story, I wish for the life of me I could remember his name off the top of my head, but there was this...
I was talking about how he studied political systems. He was specifically an intense interest in the Nazis.
Not surprising at all.
Nope.
I really did not see that coming.
Fuck you for making that. I did not see that coming. That's the lowest Nazi joke you can make.
Fuck you. I put a lot of love and effort into that. Eat my ass.
Brother, you're not my type. We've been over this. Jones was once quoted as saying, I was ready to kill by the end of 3rd grade. I mean, I was so aggressive and hostile. I was ready to kill. No one gave me love, any understanding. In those days, a parent was supposed to go with a child to school functions. There was some kind of school performance and everybody's parent was there but mine. I was standing there alone. Always was alone.
Burning down the village to feel its warmth.
Yes. Textbook example. One famous biographer who studied Jones posited that his attraction to religion was influenced by his desire for a family. It was Tim Reitman who postulated that.
Makes sense. Probably.
It's like the very, very simple thing to make.
Probably a bit simplistic, but it sounds like it's on the right track.
Can you guess what his high school nickname was, Derek?
I don't know what his nickname's gonna be, but
it's a stereotypical for his name.
Is this a nickname he gave himself?
I don't know that part. But he went by Jimmy in high school.
Okay, yeah.
He was one of those edgelords that loved deflating. Again, and he's displaying prominent edgelord behaviors before edgelords were a thing. You know how the edgy student loves debating teachers?
Oh, God, yeah. God, those guys.
He did that.
Oh, my God, I hated those guys so much.
He was the kind of edgelord that dressed in his Sunday best every day of the week.
He's mixing all of the worst guys we all knew in high school into one dude.
He was that asshole that berated people for drinking, smoking, and dancing.
He went to school with an Ahegao patterned suit, like 3-piece suit.
And then preached against sex.
Like a decal of 02 and a bikini on his briefcase.
And he preached abstinence. Definitely.
He's preached abstinence.
So we see the beginnings of his social justice / social movement roots. He didn't want to participate in sports because he hated losing, but he decided instead he would coach younger children's teams instead. And this caused him to be disturbed by the way African Americans were treated when he attended baseball games in Richmond, Indiana.
Why? Why does he care?
I don't know, but that's what brought him to talk about fucking irony. Can you guess what his father was?
I don't know. Was his father racist or?
Yes, but a specific type of racist.
Oh my God, was he a Klansman?
Yes, his father was a Klansman.
Oh my god, this was Indiana, wasn't it? Fuck.
Yes, he was part of the Indiana branch of the Klan.
Yeah, Indiana is where the third iteration of the Klan was founded, or the second. Yeah, yeah. Like Indiana had like I think it had the highest rate of Klansmen like percentage wise of the population of any state of the country because it was like their headquarters.
He ended up having an argument with his father over his father's racism, and he was quoted as they hadn't spoken in many years as a result of that. His father forbidding black friends from entering his house.
Oh, okay. I get it. His dad was a racist, so he rebelled against his dad by being anti-racist.
Can you guess how he exited his coaching career?
Did he assault a player?
No, our triangle comes back.
Did he set some of the facilities on fire?
Unfortunately not. He dropped a dog outside of a window in front of his players, killing it.
What the fuck? Oh, this fucking freak. God, somebody just needed to punch this kid and then give him a hug.
In 45, his parents separated, and then they moved to Richmond, Indiana. He graduated in 48 early with honors.
Mm-hmm.
Following the divorce, he lost the financial support of his family. He started working in a hospital in 46 as an orderly to support himself. He was well regarded by senior management, but they later recalled he just exhibited disturbing behavior towards patients and coworkers, and he also began dating a nurse in training named Marceline May Baldwin while he was at the Reed Hospital. November of 48, he moved to Bloomington, started university.
Oh, what school is in Bloomington?
Indiana University in Bloomington is what it says. IUB.
Never heard of it.
He was intending to become a doctor, but changed his mind shortly after. While he was at university, he was impressed by Eleanor Roosevelt's speech on the plight of African Americans, and he began supporting communism.
I'm trying to get into this guy's head. I'm trying to understand.
Are you sure that's a good idea, Derek?
I'm not trying to emulate him. I'm just trying to understand. Yeah, I used to throw during the war. I used to throw Heil Hitlers at German POWs, but now I was really impressed by Eleanor Roosevelt's speech about how racism is bad. So you know what? Now I think this Mao Zedong guy is pretty cool. I'm just trying.
While he was at college, he continued seeing Baldwin, and on June 12th of 49, they married. They got a home there in Bloomington. She was Methodist, and they immediately started arguing about church. Jones had a strong opposition to Methodists because they were racially segregated, and it put a strain on their marriage.
Not the worst reason to not like a.
Oh no, it's not a bad reason to hate that religion, that sect of religion. Then he began to emotionally and psychologically abuse his wife.
Yeah.
He insisted on attending Bloomington's Full Gospel Tabernacle, but eventually compromised and began attending the Methodist Church on Sundays. But even though he was attending church, he privately pressed his wife to become an atheist.
What the fuck? To become wait, hold on.
There's no explanation on that. It just
hold the fucking phone. How does that okay? This fucking guy. Oh my god.
Jones was super insecure, and he felt that he needed to test his wife's love, and often used sadistic methods to do so. One recurring tactic was to tell her friends and family that she had died. No, tell her that her friends or family had died and comfort her before admitting that it was all a lie.
I just know it's going to get worse from here. That's what sucks, as I know that it's just going to keep going down. I know the story ends with 900 dead people.
Yeah. So after 2 years at Indiana University, they relocated to Indianapolis, and he took night classes at Butler University to continue his education. He earned a degree in 61. In 51, rolling back, really weird the way this is worded, is when he started attending gatherings for the Communist Party USA in Indianapolis. He was harassed by the government for his affiliation.
Yeah. Do you know anything about CPUSA?
I've heard of it before, but I don't know a whole lot. You want to fill me in?
Just that World War II and the Red Scare really screwed the party up. They like for a good chunk of the 20th century, especially like right after the war, they were like their primary leader, like their chairman was this guy named Earl Browder, who was just a really weird fucking guy who he's kind of the guy who invented the idea of combining like Stalinistic sort of communism with like American patriotism. So like when he was leader, CPUSA rallies would have like Soviet flags and American flags like up with each other. If you've ever seen that really famous picture of one of their rallies where there's this giant like profile of Abraham Lincoln's head over the speaker's podium, and it's that they had a really weird ideological line. They were very hostile to basically every other leftist group in the country. It became very sectarian and partisan, and essentially accomplished nothing for the entire 20th century because they literally couldn't do anything unless like because they had some pretty heavy connections with the KGB.
Oh, lovely.
And like so
only good things came from the KGB, didn't it, Derek?
Yeah. Best organization that the human race has ever invented. But basically they were sort of like the US's mouthpiece, or they were Stalin's mouthpiece in the US, but Stalin was really not interested in trying to spread communism to the United States. Not only Stalin, but later Soviet leaders took an approach of like trying to contain American influence across the globe, and so CPUSA, even though they were kind of sort of like a Soviet Soviet proxy in the United States, were kind of just always left high and dry and with like really directionless and rudderless, and so they kind of just
puttered out.
Yeah, they kind of puttered out. They didn't really have a whole lot of influence, especially like going into the 60s when you get like the new left and the rise of all of these like newer revolutionary ideas like when Maoism was first starting to become a really big thing, and the college campus movements like Students for Democratic Society, whatever that thing was called, that shot off. They had a bunch of like terrorist offshoots. They never had a huge amount of influence in the American left, despite always being one of the largest groups in the American left. And just a combination of like being communists in the United States during the Cold War, mixed with the fact that they were proxies for the Soviet Union that were almost completely ignored by the Soviet Union. It just really fucked up their brains, and now today they're almost wholly and entirely devoted to this sort of like resurgence of this concept called patriotic communism, which is caused, to their credit, there are a lot of people in like modern CPUSA who are very opposed to like the concept, but you get a lot of guys like I think Jackson Hinkle is the big name in CPUSA today that's really big on the whole patriotic communism sort of thing, which is if you've ever seen on Twitter, there are those fucking freaks that have like in their profiles they have like MAGA communism, that sort of thing. It's fucking stupid.
That's an oxymoron.
Yeah, they're attempting to do the same thing that the Republican Party is by appealing to like disenfranchised white voters, but in order to basically pushing all of the same shit that the Republican Party does, but doing it in with like a red flag. That's their idea to like bringing about communism in the United States. It all traces back to this fucking period of time.
Lovely.
CPUSA, their brains have always been fucking broken. They've never been a good organization. They had some.
They've always been lobotomized.
Yeah, they had some potential when they were first founded, like when Lucy Parsons, she was later in her life, she was active in CPUSA. Elizabeth Gurley Flynn, they were some really good positive forces, and then and then Lucy Parsons died. Flynn was never really a big name within the organization itself, and then Earl Browder was the main guy for most of the 20th century, and it just never went anywhere.
Let's get on back to topic. Beginning in early 52, he announced to his wife that he was going to be a preacher for the Methodists, believing he was ready to put socialism into practice.
Wait, I thought you didn't like the Methodists.
He didn't. He was super surprised when the Methodist district superintendent helped him get a start in the church, even though he knew Jones was a communist. In summer of 52, he was hired as a student preacher to the children of Somerset Southside Methodist Church, where he started a project to build a playground for all children. He continued to speak at Pentecostal churches while serving as the student pastor.
I'm sorry. I'm trying to imagine him as a youth pastor just on Wednesday nights.
I feel like youth pastors then were different from today.
Well, yeah, I'm just thinking like what that would have looked like. Like, here's your pocket New Testament, and here's your copy of Mao Zedong's Little Red Book. Make sure your parents don't find that second one.
He continued to speak at Pentecostal churches. In early 54, he was dismissed for stealing church's funds, though he claimed that he left the church because they forbade him from integrating. Around 53, he visited a Pentecostal latter rain convention in Columbus, Indiana, where a woman prophesies. I say that counts. Prophecy's claim of a power of divinity.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Yeah, Prost. So, to recap what we've got so far. Grew up liking Hitler because he was poor and didn't get enough attention from his parents.
Because his daddy didn't love him, and his mommy didn't either.
Turns out to actually be a really smart kid, but because of his shitty personality, nobody likes him. Somehow manages to get married. Turns out to be an abusive partner.
Not physically, but psychologically and emotionally, yes.
Gets really into communism and gets really into Jesus. And then ends up getting driven out of his dreams of being for the first time getting driven out of his dreams of being a pastor, because he started embezzling funds from his church. Yeah, with a church that he actually hated because he was embezzling funds.
Yes.
All right. Love this guy so far. Let's keep going.
That's going to be one of our outtake posts on TikTok.
Oh, God, this fucking guy. And this ends with 900 people dying.
Yes.
God, the United States sucks. Any country that allows this to happen sucks.
Agreed. Around this time in 53, he visited a Pentecostal latter rain convention. Do you know what latter rain is? Because I don't.
I've heard that.
It is a post-World War II movement within Pentecostal Christianity, which remains controversial, saw itself as a continuation of restoration of early Pentecostalism. He visited the Latter Rain Convention, where a woman prophesied that he was going to be a prophet with a great ministry. He was surprised by this endorsement, but rolled with the punches and rose to the podium to a prophet with a great... Hold on, I read that wrong. To deliver a message to the crowd. This was in the middle of the healing revival and the latter rain movements during the 50s.
Yeah, I feel like it's a bad idea to give a guy with a psychological profile like this to tell them that he's a prophet of God. Feel like that.
I don't think she realized his background because she was probably spouting bullshit because I don't think she was actually a prophet. I would not be surprised. Jones believed that the latter rain movement would give him a greater opportunity as a preacher and convinced his wife to leave the Methodists, and join the Pentecostals.
I doubt it was convinced. I bet it was more like compelled.
Probably. In 53, he began attending and preaching at Laurel Street Tabernacle in Indianapolis, which was a Pentecostal Assemblies of God church. He held revivals there until 55 and traveled and spoke at other churches. He was a guest speaker at a 53 convention in Detroit. The Assembly of God was very opposed to the latter rain movement. In 53, they assigned a new pastor to the tabernacle who enforced their denomination ban on healing revivals. This led Jones to establish the Wings of Healing, a new church which eventually became the People's Temple. I would argue this is where our rule on doing something shitty but justifying it religion. It's not outwardly shitty, but he's literally just coercing people into believing his movement. So I say it's shitty in retrospect.
Hell, why not?
Well, he started off with 20 members.
Yeah. All great churches start with one guy who's really good at public speaking.
You want to know how he funded this church, Derek?
Did he embezzle a bunch of funds from the last church he was at?
No, this is even stupider. You're never going to be able to guess this, but I want to see what your most off-the-wall guess is.
Bikini car wash.
Even stupider. One more guess.
Small town bank heist.
Somehow even stupider. He sold pet fucking monkeys.
Wait, where did he get...
I don't know. He just sold pet monkeys.
Where did he get the monkeys?
I don't know.
Okay, this is what? This is the late 50s, early 60s, right?
Yeah.
He could probably just walk into a pet store and they'd have like some fucking capuchins up there.
He began to strongly associate with the independent Assemblies of God.
I'm your friendly, independent, unlicensed capuchin monkey breeder.
Unfortunately, the international group of the Independent Assemblies of God, had embraced the latter rain movement. They only had a few requirements to ordain ministers, and they also accept divine healing practices. In June of 55, he held his first joint meeting with William Branham. Can you guess what he was?
Okay, say the name again.
William Branham. I'm not sure on the pronunciation, but it's literally spelled like that. Branham.
Probably Branham. I'm guessing this is like one of like the prototype like mega preachers, like televangelists. Oh, was he a spiritual healer?
Yes, he was a healing evangelist. He was a Pentecostal leader in the Global Healing Church.
God damn it. Okay, Prost.
In 56, Jones was ordained by the Independent Assemblies of God by Joseph Maston Bowes, who was a leader in the latter rain movement. He quickly rose to prominence and even hosted a healing convention from June 11th to 15th of 56 in Indianapolis's Cradle Tabernacle. Needing a well-known figure to draw crowds, he arranged to share the pulpit with Branham.
Yeah, keep in mind this whole time he is a actual full-blown communist.
Yes. And Branham was one of those... We've seen them in movies where the person gets pickpocketed beforehand and the someone's in their ear reading the ID to the evangelist. He's one of those people. He would be able to tell people their name, their address, and why they came for prayer. And then pronouncing them healed.
See, back then, this was just the start of the Cold War. This is just after the Red Scare. Like, this is still a weird time where you could be like a strong like religious figure and still be like a communist, and it wouldn't be super weird.
Yeah. So, Derek, can you guess how many people attended this first meeting with Jim Jones and Branham?
I'm guessing it was in the thousands.
1,100.
1100. Okay, yeah, that's pretty good size.
Branham claimed that Jones and his ministry. Hold on. Let me restructure that. At the convention, Branham issued a prophetic endorsement of Jones and his ministry, saying that God used the convention to send forth a new great ministry. Many of the attendees believed that Jones possessed a supernatural gift, and along with Branham's endorsement, it led to a rapid growth of the People's Temple, particularly African Americans.
Not surprising, yeah.
According to a newspaper report, regular attendance of the People's Temple swelled to 1,000 people. So they go from 20 people to 1,000 within the same year.
Gotta give it to him. The guy is...
Thanks to Branham's publicity. Remember, the People's Temple wasn't originally known as the People's Temple.
Yeah, what was it called at this point?
It was... Let me find the original name. I gotta read through it real quick. I know I did. I'm just trying to find it. It was originally known as Wings of Healing, but it got renamed to the People's Temple. Following that convention, it got renamed, and it wasn't the People's Temples yet. At least it wasn't shorthand People's Temple. It was called the People's Temple Christian Church Full Gospel, to associate it with Full Gospel Pentecostalism, which was a evangelical doctrine that had four aspects: salvation, sanctification, faith healing, and the second coming of Christ.
Oh, just all of the doctrines and all of the different movements that you're describing so far sounds like an absolutely awful combination.
It eventually got shortened to the People's Temple, as we would know. He participated in a series of multi-state revival campaigns with Branham in the second half of the 50s. He claimed to be a follower and promoter of Branham's message. He even hosted a second International Pentecostal Convention in 1957, which was headlined by Branham. Throughout the conventions, he secured connections through the Latter-rain movement. He adopted one of the Latter-rain's key doctrines and continued to promote for the rest of his life the manifested sons of God. What the fuck is that? Basically, it's a continuation of Restorism. There are so many religious terms that we're probably not going to give a good representation of them through the episode, and I apologize for that. I did not know there were so many religious terms in this episode. Branham and the Latter-rain movement promoted the belief that individuals could become manifestations of God with supernatural gifts and superhuman abilities. This is not a specific individual claiming to have powers, so we're not counting as a shot, audience. They believed that such manifestations signaled the second coming of Christ, and that people endowed with these gifts would usher in a millennial age of heaven on earth. Jones was fascinated with this idea and began preaching utopian ideas, and eventually the idea that he himself was a manifestation of God. This is him using religion as a justification for his shitty acts, in my opinion. So 3 sips. By the late 60s, Jones taught he was a manifestation of Christ the Revolution. Adopted parts of Branham's preaching methods, his methods, doctrine, styles. He claimed to be a return of Elijah, the prophet. He claimed he was the voice of God. He claimed he was a manifestation of Christ. And he promoted the belief that the end of the world is imminent, as most cult leaders do. This is the first time I'm really referring to his religion as a cult. We've talked about it before that he was a cult leader already in the podcast, but 1000% he was a cult leader at the end of the day. Most of his successful tactics for recruiting were from Branham, but he eventually separated from the Latter Rain movement after he got into a disagreement with Branham when Jones prophesied Branham's death.
Of course he did.
The falling out was probably due to Branham's racial teachings, which it doesn't go too much in depth on, but it says the serpent seed, or known as the dual seed, or the two seed line doctrine. I know this, but not by this term. So, this is probably a really racially motivated thing. So, you know how there's the belief that there was a woman before Eve, right? Lilith?
Yeah.
So this is a probably very racist belief that African Americans, and this is not me looking it up fully, but this is me taking what little I saw on a snippet and making conjectures, so don't quote me, that all African Americans are descendants of Lilith. And most religious beliefs that believe that Lilith was an actual religious figure, believe that Lilith was a being of pure sin or a cursed demonic entity, or however you want to believe that. So anyone that was of African descent was inherently sinful.
These fucking guys. Oh, Jesus. It's like how the Mormons believe that black skin is the mark of Cain.
Essentially, yes. Another belief is that Branham also became increasingly vocally opposition to communism.
Yeah, that'll do it.
Throughout the Latter Rain movement, Jones became of the Divine Father, an African American spiritual leader of the International Peace Movement, who was often derided by Pentecostal ministers for his claims of divinity. We're going to take a shot, but let me finish what I'm saying. Jones made his first visit to Investigator Father Divine's peace mission in Philadelphia. Jones was careful to explain his visit to the peace mission so he could give an authentic, unbiased, and objective statement about his activities to his fellow Pentecostal ministers. So Father Divine was Reverend M.J. Divine. Oh, that was his actual last name. Interesting. I thought that was just like, associating the person with the word divine rather than his actual name being divine.
Stage name.
Yes, essentially. American spiritual leader from 1907 to 65. His full self-given name was Reverend Major Jealous Divine. He was known as the Messenger. He founded the International Peace Mission Movement, formed its doctrine, and oversaw its growth. He claimed to be God himself.
I think of all of the spiritual leaders who claim divinity, I think that was the most bold.
Before we take our shot, I think that's a next level step to claim to be, speaking on religious, like Christian religious. I think there are two levels of being like insane that are past the normal, claiming to have divinical powers, claiming to be Jesus and claiming to be God, because within Christianity it's essentially claiming to be the same thing depending on how you view the Trinity. That is insane.
Yeah, Aryans are molding in the comments right now.
Most likely. Are you ready for that shot, Derek?
Yeah. Prost.
Cheers. Jones made his first visit to investigate Father Divine's peace mission in Philadelphia. He carefully explained that his visit to the peace mission was so he could give an authentic, unbiased, and I already said that part. Sorry. I wasn't sure where I stopped off. Divine served as an important influence to develop Jones' missionary. While publicly disavowing many of Father Divine's teaching, Jones actually began to promote Divine's teachings on communal living and gradually implementing many of the outreaching practicing he witnessed at the Peace Mission, including setting up a soup kitchen and providing free groceries and clothing to people in need. He made a second visit to Father Divine in 58 to learn more about his practices. Jones bragged to his congregation that he would like to be the successor of Father Divine and made many comparisons between their two ministries. Jones began progressively implementing the disciplinary practices he learned from Father Divine, which increasingly took control over the lives of his people's temple. In the 80s, Jones gradually separated from Pentecostalism and the Latter Rain movement. He started an organization that would be open to all of his beliefs. In 60, just the year 60, not the 60s, the People's Temple joined Disciples of Christ denomination, whose headquarters was nearby in Indianapolis. Archie Il James, I'm guessing is pronouncing, assured Jones that the organization would tolerate his political beliefs, and Jones was finally ordained by the Disciples in Christ in 64. When he was ordained, the requirements were for the Disciples of Christ were varied greatly. Disciples membership was open to any church. Both in 74 and 77, Disciples leadership received allegations of abuse from the People's Temple.
No way. No, that's so surprising. I didn't expect that. He seemed like such an upstanding guy so far.
They investigated, but found no wrongdoing. Disciples of Christ found People's Temple to be an exemplary Christian ministry, overcoming human differences and dedication to human services. The People's Temple contributed $1.1 million to the denomination between 66 and 77. And the People's Temple remained a part of the Disciples of Christ until the Jonestown incident. 60, the Indianapolis mayor, Boswell, appointed Jones the director of the local Human Rights Commission. Jones ignored Boswell's advice to keep a low profile and used his position to secure new outlets for his view on local radio and television programs. The mayor and other commissioners asked him to curtail his actions, but he refused. Jones was widely cheered at the meeting of NAACP and the Urban League, where he was encouraged by his audience to be more militant. Capping his speech with, "Let my people go." During his time as commissioner, Jones helped integrate churches, restaurants, and, interestingly enough, telephone companies. Telephone companies feel like the oddball out of all everything. There was also the Indianapolis PD, a theater and an amusement park, and the Indiana University Health Methodist Hospital. The telephone company throws me the most left hook.
Yeah, I don't know specifics, but it kind of makes sense because, like,
it does make sense, but the telephone company just feels the weirdest.
I feel like it's like a. Oh, sorry, I'm yawning a lot because I've been on a different sleep schedule than I was with my old job because I'm waking up a whole lot earlier.
No, new job is definitely a different adjustment. I apologize.
Yeah, no, because I've been because with my old job I'd go to bed at like midnight or 1 a.m. because I'd be waking up at like 9 or 10 anyways. Yeah, because I'd go into work at noon. But now I'm getting up at like 5:30.
Jones set sting operations to capture restaurants who refused to serve African American customers, and wrote to the American Nazi Party leaders and passed their responses to the media.
Okay, I'd like to see some of those because I bet this is right around what George Lincoln Rockwell, that when he was starting to become like a big name.
This is also like, wasn't this right around the time that what was his name that assassinated Kennedy?
Lee Harvey Oswald.
Oswald was like back in the U.S. but was supporting the Nazi Party.
Oswald never Oswald never supported the Nazi Party.
I know he supported communism.
No, he was a dedicated. He hated Nazis.
Okay, apologies. One, I'm drunk. Two, it's like I'm not a history major.
No, his major activism prior to the assassination was he was involved with the an organization called Fair Play for Cuba. That was like his big thing was advocating for
I know he was a big advocate of Cuba.
lifting the embargo on Cuba was his big thing.
Yeah. In '61, Jones suffered a collapse and was hospitalized. The hospital accidentally placed Jones in the black ward, and he refused to be moved. He began to make the beds and empty bedpans of African American patients. Political pressures resulted in Jones' actions caused the hospital officials to desegregate the wards. So, small victory for Jones, and the only thing I can call him that he did a good in his life.
Yeah, that's the weird thing is.
Oh shit! That's one of our rules.
Yeah, that's one sip.
Yeah, he does something good for his own agenda.
Yeah, that's the weird thing because I could tell from like this is the period when he starts to become like a big name in the civil rights movement. Because
yeah, in Indiana, he was criticized for his integration views. The People's Temple became a target for white supremacists. Among several incidences, a swastika was placed on the temple, and a stick of dynamite was left in the coal pile. I'm assuming it didn't go off with the way it's worded. And a dead cat was thrown at Jones's house after a threatening phone call.
yeah, but he probably had a pretty good time with that dead cat carcass. He probably had a lot of fun with that.
God damn it, Derek.
See, this is what sucks is that at this point, if this was all the People's Temple and Jim Jones was, this is fucking rad.
He wouldn't be a bad guy.
Yeah, this shit is awesome. I love this shit. Like, this is like his...
If it ended here, he would not be remembered in history as the way he was.
Yeah, if this is all that the People's Temple was, he'd be like like one of the greatest fucking heroes of 20th century America.
Nevertheless, publicity was generated because of Jones' activities, and he attracted a larger congregation. By the end of '61, Indianapolis was more integrated, and they believed Jones was responsible, which it's hard to argue against.
Yeah, he was one of the leading voices in integrating Indianapolis. Like that's a big fucking deal.
This is going to lead us to a sip, so if you want to take it now, let's go ahead and take that shit now. So this whole area is, for our first sip, he does something good for his selfish reasons. This whole topic is called the Rainbow Family. Can you guess what it is?
I don't know, but it doesn't sound great.
Jones and his wife were known to have adopted several non-white children.
Okay, that not a great. It makes sense in the context of like the times, but now
He referred to them, his household, as the Rainbow Family, and stated integration is a more personal thing with me right now, and it's a question of my son's future. He portrayed the. Whoa, I was waiting for that to happen. Sorry. He portrayed the temple as a rainbow family. In '54, Jones Agnes. In '59, he adopted 3 Korean American children named Lou, Stephanie, and Suzanne, and encouraged his congregation to adopt orphans from the war-ravaged Korea. Stephanie Jones died at 5 in a car accident in '59. So he had her for less than a year, and she died.
shit, that sucks. That actually genuinely is awful.
Yeah.
Agnes it's a pretty popular Christian name. Saint Agnes is actually my sister's patron saint. It's the saint that she chose when she was confirmed. It's a Catholic thing. When you get confirmed when you're like a teenager, you pick a saint to be your patron.
What's weird is it doesn't say a gender on this, but it's implied it's male. At least from the way I'm reading this sentence, I don't know if that's the proper.
Agnes is a girl's name, so
Okay.
but yeah, Saint Agnes was Saint Agnes is the patron saint of animals,
Wow.
which is why my sister chose Agnes. My patron saint is
Do you pick your patron saint? I don't know about a lot about Catholicism.
yeah, you pick your own patron saint. You pick a basically like you pick a saint that you pray to represent the virtues and the values that you want to represent in like your Catholic faith. And you pray to that saint to intercede on your behalf. Basically, you pray to the saint, and then the saint in heaven prays to God. And so you go directly to the saint, so the saint can go directly to God on your behalf.
I know how this works, but it wasn't described to me as praying on your patron saint's part. It was more like confers with God, not necessarily praying, but like speaks with God on your behalf.
Yeah, that's what praying is basically. I don't know if this is how it is in other Christian denominations, but in the Catholic faith, like when you pray, the implication is you're speaking directly to God. And so when you pray to a saint, you're speaking to a saint who will then go to God on your behalf.
Essentially, you're speaking to someone who has more of God's attention on your behalf.
Right, yeah.
In 59, Jones and his wife had their only biological child. Can you guess their name? They didn't take either of the parents' last name. And the last name's been mentioned.
Did they give their child the name Jesus?
No.
Oh, God. Divine?
No, they named their only biological child Stephen Gandhi.
Gandhi. Oh, wow. It makes sense. I wasn't expecting it, but it makes sense, I guess.
It does, but it's so like it's putting yourself in a pedestal. It's like so self fellatio. Like you're jerking yourself off.
That is some actual, like, I'm starting to see like some of the.
No, the next topic is real hippie shit. In 61 they were first white couple in Indiana to adopt a black child. Can you guess what they named him? Because they broke one of the small town murder / crime and sports rules.
Jim Jr.
Yes, Jim Jones Jr. Or James W. Jones Jr.
Ugh.
Never name your kid Junior, kids. For the audience, it always ends bad. Either you become a shitty person or your child becomes a shitty person if you name them Junior.
Ugh.
Any words on naming your kid Junior, Derek?
Only that it'll be a cold day in hell before I ever name a child Derek.
They also adopted a white son, and I feel ashamed. Do you know why? Timothy Glenn Tupper.
Where are these names coming from? Why are you allowed? Wait. Are you allowed to do that? Like when your child is born, you don't have to necessarily give them your last name.
No, you don't.
Okay.
You can name them where the fuck you want.
I actually didn't know that. Okay.
His birth mother was a member of the temple. Can you guess what his next kid's name was?
Ooh, I'm guessing it's gonna be one of the apostles.
Kinda, but not really.
This is gonna be.
He fathered Jim John Chemo. So the official name that's not in brackets in this article is Jim John, Jon, not John. And Chemo's in parentheses. I'm assuming that's the mother's name. No, not the mother's name. With Carolyn Layton.
Okay,
This is a bastard child.
Oh, he cheated on it. Okay.
This is where the real cult leadership happens. The I need to sleep with other people's wives stuff happens.
Okay, this is where we're getting into God wants you to sleep with me.
It's not outwardly stated in this part, but, and I'm also assuming with that last name, there's some kind of Asian descendantry. In 61, Jones warned his congregation that he had prophesied there would be a nuclear attack that would devastate Indianapolis.
Yeah, I'm sure Indianapolis is really high on the Soviet Union's shit list.
His wife confided to her friends that Jones was increasingly becoming paranoid and fearful. Oh, wow. So not only did Jones' followers, but William Branham's followers moved to South America during the 60s. Branham prophesied that in 61 that the United States would be destroyed in a nuclear war. You want to know why they moved to South America? Jones's people, not necessarily Branham's people. It's going to sound so fucking stupid, Derek.
See, my initial thought was that they just moved because they thought that they were being investigated.
They moved because of the nuclear crisis. Do you know why they picked the location? Is what I'm going to ask.
Oh.
It's going to be 3 sips versus 1 sip, if you can guess right.
If I remember correctly, New Guinea was the only country, or one of the only countries in South America that was friendly to communists.
Probably not wrong, but not necessarily the right answer. Jones read in January of 62 from Esquire magazine that South America was probably the safest place for an impending nuclear war. Motherfucker took advice from Esquire magazine on where to have his doomsday strategy. Ready for those sips, sir?
Yeah, let's go for it.
3.
That is
the stupidest reason to pick a location.
I don't know what I'm thinking.
Jones stopped in Georgetown, Guyana, on his way to Brazil. He held revival meetings in Guyana, which at the time was a British colony. Fuck Britain.
Yeah, fuck Britain.
He continued to Brazil, and he rented a modest 3-home bedroom in Belo Horizonte, Hoizonte. I have no idea how to pronounce that. I apologize for my dyslexia. Please find it charming, not insulting. He studied the local economy and representatives of racial minorities to his message, and he found the language to be a barrier. He was careful not to portray himself as a communist. He spoke of an apostolic communal lifestyle rather than Marxism. Then he moved his family to Rio de Janeiro in 63, where they worked with the poor in favelas.
Yeah, there's those. If you ever see pictures of like the poor parts of Rio, it's.
Oh, I've seen that picture before. I just didn't have a term for it.
Yeah, they're called the favelas.
He was unable to find a suitable location for the People's Temple, and he was plagued by guilt for abandoning his civil rights movement in Indiana. During his year of abstinence, the People's Temple declined less than 100.
So the People's Temple just fucking fell off when they tried to move.
Essentially, yes. He demanded his People's Temple send its revenue to South America to support his efforts, and the church went in debt to support his mission. In late 63, Archie L. James sent word that the People's Temple was about to collapse and threatened to resign if Jones did not return soon. Jones reluctantly returned. In December of 63, the People's Temple was bitterly divided. Financial issues and low attendance forced Jones to sell the church building and relocate to smaller buildings nearby. To raise money, Jones briefly returned to the revival circuit, traveling and holding healing campaigns with Latter-rain churches. So this is probably the first time in years he was associated with the Latter-rain movement. He possibly to distract the People's Temple members from their issues. He told his Indiana congregation that the world would. He basically prophesied nuclear war to distract them.
Yeah, yeah. We're getting into the end game where the
This is getting really close to the end of the story, but that doesn't end our tale of.
yeah the leadership is starting to get desperate.
Yes.
As they get desperate, they become more drastic in order to keep their membership on board. That's typically where cults go.
On July 15th of 67, leading a socialist movement, Eden on Earth, the temple moved to Northern California for safety. Starting in 64 is when that relocation started. While in California, Jones took a job as a history and government teacher at an adult education school in Yucca. He played his loyal members in the classes to help him with recruitment. Jones recruited 50 new members to the People's Temple in the first 3 months. And 67, followers coaxed another 75 members to Indianapolis to move to California. And 68, People's Temple, California location admitted to the Disciples of Christ. So the new location was readmitted to Disciples of Christ. He played up famous members of the Disciples, including Landon Johnson and J. Edgar Hoover, and
Wait.
not members of his church, of the larger parts that they were associated, the Disciples of Christ. Wasn't J. Edgar Hoover the president who fucked shit up?
No, he wasn't president. He was the head of the FBI.
Okay, yes, that's what I was thinking of.
Basically spearheaded all of the major
anti-MLKJ stuff.
Not just MLK, but all of the infiltration and disruption of left-wing groups in the United States during the Cold War, to include students, the student left-wing groups, Maoist groups, communist groups, civil rights groups, gay rights groups. He had a hand in fucking over all of them, and it's almost guaranteed at this point J. Edgar Hoover was doing something to try and disrupt the People's Temple. I have no evidence of it.
What's funnier is the People's Temple used J. Edgar Hoover to further their platform because J. Edgar Hoover was a member of the Disciples of Christ, which was technically the People's Temple was associated with.
Yeah, as was Lyndon Johnson, another fucking maniac. Not as much of a maniac as Nixon, but still a fucking maniac.
By 69, Jones increased his membership in California to 300.
Okay, so he took a mission vacation to Rio, and then because he was gone, he lost his sway over all of his followers, and they all left in droves.
So early signs of abuse showed up right after Jones moved to California. He began using illicit drugs, which heightened his paranoia. He increasingly used fear as a manipulation and control tactic. He warned his followers that their enemies were seeking to destroy them. He identified the enemy as the Ku Klux Klan, then the Nazis, then redneck vigilantes, and finally the American government, which ideologically at the time probably weren't too dissimilar from each other.
Yeah. Here's the complicated thing about it. I would 100...
Okay, I would say the intricacies of each policy were probably different, but if you boiled down to brass tacks on each of these ideologies, you probably come very similar on all four.
Here's the complicated thing, is that I am 100% certain the United States government was doing some shit to try and disrupt the People's Temple.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
an explicitly communist pro-civil rights organization in 1968. There is no way the FBI was not elbow deep in trying to fuck them over. So, no credit to Jim Jones. You do not in fact have to hand it to Jim Jones.
Jim Jones was not special.
Absolutely, I could believe that they were doing that. But whatever real disruption was happening with the People's Temple, Jones, it was whatever was actually happening. He was just leveraging to increase paranoia and increase dependency on his own rhetoric and leadership amongst his followers.
Oh, 1,000%. He prophesies that fires, car accidents, and death or injury would come to anyone unfaithful to his teachings. He constantly pressed his followers to promote aggressively and fulfilling his beliefs.
That is oddly specific. If you are unfaithful or disloyal to me, God's going to smite you with a car accident.
Probably. He established a planning commission made up his lieutenants of the People's Temple. Jones began controlling all aspects of his followers' lives. People who joined the People's Temple turned over all their assets to the church in exchange for free room and board. Members who worked outside the temple turned over their income to be used for the benefit of the church. So this is where really the official transfer from a religion to a true cult happens, in my opinion.
Yeah. We turn from this is the transition from a particularly toxic church to an actual cult.
Oh, 100%. Jones has directed his followers to work on various projects for additional income and set up agricultural operations in Redwood Valley to grow food. Large community outreach projects were organized and temple members were bused to perform work and community service across the region. And after this, real allegations of abuse occurred. The first known cases of serious abuse in the People's Temple arose as the Planning Commission carried out discipline against members who were not fulfilling Jones's vision. Jones control over members of the People's Temple. This is where real cult behavior extends. We were talking earlier about the controlling "I want to sleep with your wife" stuff with his last child, with the chemo in parentheses we talked about.
Yeah, I feel like, because I know at this point, like, a good chunk of his followership, like, not just at this point, but like over the years, has been immigrants. It's been people from different countries. And I can only imagine, like, the kind of abuse, like the position of power that he would have over some of his followers who were like who were immigrants, who were kind of in a vulnerable position of being like foreign transplants to the United States. That can often be a very precarious position. I can only imagine it be something that he'd take advantage of.
Oh, 100%. So the first known case of serious abuse that was like recorded, I guarantee there was abuse prior to this.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah.
Arose in California as the Planning Commission carried out discipline against members who were not fulfilling Jones's vision.
Ooh. Quote, scare quotes, Jones's vision. That is super ominous.
It is. Jones's control over the People's Temple extended to their sex lives. Who could be married? Again, I mentioned this earlier. This was really where the cult, like, I can sleep with your wife shit happened. It's not directly I can sleep with your wife shit, but might as well be. Some members were coerced into abortions. And now here's where the "I gonna sleep your wife" shit started. He began requiring sexual favors from the wives of some members. And even raped some, male members of the congregation.
Oh, this is escalating way faster than I expected.
I didn't know about this. I didn't know there was any homosexual like rapes with Jim Jones. I assumed like there was coerced rape, like the religious rape, like where people don't think they're really being raped because they're so indoctrinated within the religion they don't realize rape is happening. As stereotypical with cults, I didn't realize there was, again, homosexual or male rape.
Yeah, I that's out of left field.
Members who rebelled against Jones were punished with reduced rations. Like, they gave food rations in the cult. Like, at this point, it's full on a cult. They were given harsher work schedules. They were publicly ridiculed and publicly humiliated, and sometimes were physically punished. It says physical, and sometimes with physical violence. The way it's wording, I'm assuming physical punishment. As temple membership grew, Jones created a armed security group to ensure his followers.
There it is. There it is.
And to guarantee his own personal safety.
What was this? Did this group have a name?
It's not mentioned if there is yet.
I bet they had an uncomfortably badass name.
I would not be surprised. This feels like the kind of thing that they wouldn't record the name, unfortunately. I guarantee you there was a name, but I don't think they recorded it, from what I've seen so far. So, by the end of 1969, the People's Temple was growing rapidly. Jones' message of economic socialism and racial equality, along with the integrated nature of the People's Temple, provided attractive, especially to students and racial minorities. By the year 70, the People's Temple opened branches in several cities, including San Francisco, San Diego, and Los Angeles. Jones began shifting his focus to major cities across California because of limited expansion opportunities, and he moved the temple's headquarters to San Francisco, which became a major center for racial protests. By 1973, the People's Temple had grown to 2,570, with 36,000 subscribers to their newsletter.
Fuck.
Jones grew the temple by purposely targeting other churches. In 1970, Jones and 150 of his followers took a trip to San Francisco Missionary Baptist Church. He held a healing revival in where he impressed the crowd by claiming to heal a man with cancer. Later, his followers admitted to helping him stage the healing. At the end of the event, he began attacking and condemning Baptist teachings and encouraging the members to abandon the faith and join him.
Okay, well, me too. Like, to be fair.
It probably wasn't hard to fake that.
You do not, in fact, have to hand it to Jim Jones. But
No, this wasn't impressive at all. The event was successful, and he recruited 200 new members. In a less successful attempt in 1971, a large number of his followers visited the tomb and shrine of Father Divine shortly after his death. Jones confronted Divine's widow and claimed to be the reincarnation of Father Divine. Fuck Jones!
wait, that doesn't even make sense. They were alive at the same time. They met with each other. There's pictures of them together. They talked to each other.
I'm assuming they did not think that reincarnation had to happen at the beginning of life. That reincarnation could happen like taking on at a certain point in time. That's the only explanation I have. That's the only explanation. At that banquet, Jones' followers seized control of the event and addressed Divine's followers, claiming he was the Divine's successor. Divine's wife rose up and accused Jones of being the devil and demanded he leave. Jones only recruited 12 followers from this event. I'm impressed he got any from this event.
I feel bad. I feel a little bad for saying this, but like, we're not dealing with the brightest people here.
No, and I can't blame you for being bad about that, but you're right. Then Jones became active in San Francisco politics. He was able to gain control with prominent local and state politicians. Thanks to their growing numbers, Jones and the People's Temple played an instrumental role in electing George Moscone as mayor in 1975. Moscone subsequently appointed Jones as chairman of San Francisco's Housing Authority. Jones hosted local political figures at his San Francisco apartment. In September of 1976, Assemblyman Wiley Brown served as master of ceremonies at a large testimonial dinner for Jones, attended by Governor Jerry Brown and Lieutenant Governor Marvin Damali. Damali? No, it's Damali. At that dinner, Wiley Brown touted Jones as what you see every day when you look in the mirror. Can you imagine what 4 figures he claimed Jones was a combination of? You're never fucking gonna guess even 2 of these.
FDR, Frank Sinatra, Gandhi, and Stalin.
You didn't guess a single fucking one. MLKJ, Angela Davis, Einstein, and Mao.
Okay, I was in the same vein at least. I was thinking along the same lines.
Milk spoke to audiences during political rallies at the temple. He wrote, "Reverend Jim, take me a many day to come back down from the high that I reached today. I found deer today. I found a sense of being that makes up for all the hours and energy placed in a fight. I found what you wanted me to find. I shall be back, for I can never leave." Which makes no fucking sense.
I shall be back, for I can never leave.
I mean, that sounds badass right there at the end. I shall be back, for I can never leave. That sounds like the final line in the very last Terminator we ever make movie. I shall be back, for I can never leave. But no, we're never going to make another Terminator movie. This is the final movie Sylvester Stallone can ever act in, because he's on his deathbed. Through his connections with California politicians, Jones established contacts with key political figures. He met privately with vice presidential candidate Walter Maldoni on his campaign in the 1976 election, which led Maldoni to publicly praise the temple. First Lady Rosalind Carter met with Jones on multiple occasions and corresponded with him about Cuba, and spoke with him at the grand opening of the San Francisco headquarters, where he received louder applause than she did. Jones forged alliances with key columnists and others at the San Francisco Chronicle and other press outlets that gave Jones favorable press during his early years in California. We get into Jonestown. I'm going to skip over a section of this article because we're already running long for a mystery docket. In the fall of 1977, he escapes to New Guinea. Jones and the Planning Commission devised a plan to escape from the United States. They escaped to Guyana.
Okay, why? So why? What are they escaping from? What is the actual justification for relocating?
Well, one, he was escaping from people figuring out he was a quack because none of his healings were real, as we all fucking knew.
Oh, really? Oh, that's shocking. Oh, I was for sure that he was legitimate. I thought if anybody was a real spiritual healer, it would have been Jim Jones.
Um, there was one lady where he claimed to have healed her broken arm. He drugged one of his members, Irene Mason, while she was unconscious. A cast was put on her arm. So this was a fake injury. When she regained consciousness, she was told she had fallen and broken her arm and taken to the hospital. She was brought to one of his healing sermons where Jones removed the cast in front of the congregation. So he faked her injury. He claimed that one of his inner circle prayed to be healed of cancer. And after the healing, his member coughed up a chicken gizzard. It was the tumor.
Oh, and then they claimed that the gizzard was a fucking tumor. Fucking. Oh my god, that is so.
Because he was afraid his methods would be exposed, because there was an investigation opened on him, he announced he was no longer going to be continuing his ministry within Indiana. And when he moved, when he was set up in California, he backed away from the healing practices. The only issue was Lester Kinsvalving ran a series of articles targeting Jones and the People's Temple in the San Francisco Examiner in September of 1977, and reported that Jones claims the divinity and exposed his purported miracles as a hoax. In 1973, Rose Case, one of his former followers, began working with a group in Utah to investigate his People's Temple, and they uncovered a fake healing, the abusive treatment of a woman in the church, and evidence that Jones had raped a member of his congregation. Reports of the investigation reached Jones, who became increasingly paranoid that the authorities were after him. Case reported his findings to local police, but they never took action. Shortly after this, 8 more members of Jones's church made accusations of abuse against the Planning Commission and the People's Temple staff members. It doesn't state that it was directly against Jones himself. They accused members of the Planning Commission of being homosexuals and remember, this was before homosexuality was accepted. This was homosexuals were the devil at this time.
Yeah. I mean, when I was a kid, gay was still an insult.
We're about the same age, yes. We were scared of being called that and questioned their true commitment to socialism before leaving the People's Temple. Jones became convinced he was losing control and needed to relocate the People's Temple. December of 1973, Jones was arrested and charged with lewd conduct for allegedly masturbating in the presence of a male undercover LAPD vice officer. Out of everything Jones did, how the fuck does he masturbate in front of a LAPD officer?
Maybe I'm starting to get a little bit more of his psychological profile. He's also closeted.
He's just a pervert.
Yeah, he's a pervert, but
not in the good way.
Not in the good way, yeah. He's the bad kind of closeted.
Yes, he's the bad kind of closeted. And guess where he did this masturbation in front of the LAPD officer?
It was in the church, wasn't it?
No. in the movie theater restroom near Los Angeles' MacArthur Park. He did it in a movie theater restroom.
Listen, let he who has not jerked off in a movie theater restroom in front of an undercover cop cast the first.
I've never masturbated in a movie theater bathroom. On December 20th, the charge against Jones were dismissed. The case was dismissed, although why it was dismissed was never known. And the court case was sealed, and the judge ordered that the records of the arrest be destroyed.
What the fuck?
Sounds like Jones had some blackmail on the judge. I'm not gonna lie. With the way this case turned out, because if you jack off in front of an LAPD officer, it sounds like they got you dead to rights. But if the judge dismisses it this way, you gotta have some blackmail.
Either blackmail or just like political connections. Like, let's be honest. It's the 70s. Every single cult on the planet has some political connections with somebody in state politics in California.
Probably, to be honest. In the fall of 73, Jones and the Planning Commission devised a plan to escape the United States because of all the shit they were accused of by this point.
Okay.
They began to develop a long-term plan to relocate the People's Temple. They decided on Guyana as a favorable location, citing its recent revolution, socialist government, and the favorable reaction Jones received when he traveled there in 63.
That's right. Yeah, because Guyana had just had like a revolution against colonial rule. I think it was a Dutch colony that during decolonization the Netherlands were like kind of resistant to releasing their overseas colonies, and Guyana had like a communist revolution to overthrow Dutch colonial rule.
Yeah. In October of 63, the People's Temple voted unanimously to start an agricultural commune in Guyana. Then in December, Jones and I. James traveled to Guyana to find a suitable location. By the summer of 74, land and supplies were purchased in Guyana. Jones was put in charge of the project and oversaw the installation of a power generation station, a clearance of fields for farming, and the construction of dormitories to prepare for the first settlers. In December of 74, the first group arrived in Guyana to start operating the commune that would later become known as Jonestown. Dun dun dun! Jones left James to oversee Jamestown while he returned to the United States to continue efforts to combat the negative press. Although he was largely unsuccessful, in March of 77, Marshall Kilduff published a story in New West magazine exposing the abuse, including allegations of physical, emotional, and sexual abuse.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, this article was kind of the beginning of the end. This is when it like really started to like.
This is really where because the Jamestown incident happens a year, the next year, really fucked it Jones over and decided where I think this was, like you said, this was the beginning of the ends for Jones. The article convinced Jones that it was time to relocate to Guyana. He began to compel church members to make the move. He promoted the commune as a means to create a socialist paradise and a sanctuary. He purported to be a model communist community, adding the temple comprised the purest communists there are. Once arriving in Jonestown, Jones prevented members from leaving the settlement. Entertainment movies from Georgetown that the settlers had watched were mostly canceled in favor of Soviet propaganda shots and documentation on American social problems. Lessons on Soviet affiliations, Jones's crisis, and the alleged Mercenaries dispatched by Tim Stowen, who had defected from the temple, turned against the group, and the topic of adult midnight lectures and classroom discussions of Jones' discourse about revolution and adversaries. At the start of 77, there were only about 50 settlers who were expanding the commune, but it was not ready to settle by a large influx of settlers. Bureaucratic requirements after Jones' arrival sapped labor resources for other means. Buildings fell in disrepair and weeds encroached on the fields. E. James warned Jones that the facilities could only support 200 people, but Jones believed the need to relocate was urgent and determined to improve it immediately. By May, Jones and about 600 of his followers arrived in Jonestown. About 400 more followed in subsequent months. So that's where we get our about 900. So about a 100 people discrepancy of potential survivors. Jones began moving the temple's financial assets overseas and started to sell off property in the United States. The People's Temple had over $10 million in assets at the time. That's a fucking lot for this time. Despite the negative press, Jones was still respected outside the People's Temple for setting up a racially integrated church and helping the disadvantaged. 68% of Jonestown's residents were black. I didn't know that.
Yeah, there were a really strong racial component to the entire situation that is really complicated, but also like really can't be avoided when you're talking about it. Is just how much of his following was people who were disillusioned with American culture, black people who were disillusioned with American culture because of all of the explicit racism. It was the midst of the civil rights movement, and they went to Jones believing that he was a revolutionary force who would bring about racial equality in the country. And that was a huge way that he manipulated people into joining his toxic spirituality. And that is, I think that's there's a very strong racial component. A white man using a civil rights cause to manipulate black people into joining his extremely toxic, abusive religious movement is, I think, an aspect of it that really isn't discussed or appreciated enough about this whole situation.
So on November 18th of 78, Jones received word from his security that he had failed to kill his security guards had failed to kill an opposition's party. He concluded that escapees would soon inform the United States of the attack, and they would send military to seize Jonestown. Jones called all of his community to the Central Pavilion. He informed the community that Ryan was dead, and it was only a matter of time before military commandos descended on the commune and killed them all.
Yeah.
Essentially, he lied to his people in saying he had killed the dissenter, but because they killed the dissenter.
Well, this wasn't just a dissenter. This was a sitting United States senator that they killed. Leo Ryan, yeah, he was a congressman. He had come down as part of a federal investigation to investigate abuses in Jonestown, and when he was on the tarmac at the airport, he was attacked by armed agents of Jim Jones, and was killed on the tarmac along with a bunch of his aides. And after a sitting United States congressman was murdered by a gang led by a cult, Jones knew that from that point forward, there was no hope for him being able to continue in his leadership position, because the federal government was going to come down on him hard for this. He he was going to be extradited back to the United States and be sent to prison.
After this, Jones told his people that they would not be given, like, amnesty or safe passage from Russia because they argued that Russia didn't want to have to deal with the fallout.
Yeah, there was.
So he argued with his members. He and along with like key members argued that they should commit revolutionary suicide.
Yeah, this is a really interesting part that when I was learning about Jonestown really hit me hard. Concept that was developed by Russian anarchists in the late 1800s, but he had refined it into like this sort of new form, and given it an actual name, revolutionary suicide. It's the concept that basically once you commit to being a revolutionary, you are essentially committing suicide because you are accepting that as a revolutionary you are dead, that the state and whatever forces and powers that you are trying to overthrow through your revolution are going to stop at nothing to try to kill you. And so by committing to be a revolutionary, you're committing to being a dead man. And that's the idea of, that's what revolutionary suicide is in like modern revolutionary political vernacular. It's not literal suicide. It's just the accepting death as a part of your mission to overthrow the current existing power structures. But what they did was they took that already existing phrase, which was popularized by the Black Panther Party in the context of the revolutionary socialist side of the civil rights movement, the Black Panther Party. And they took that, and Jim Jones took that phrase and manipulated it into meaning literal suicide. Which is, to me personally, because that book was so important to me and so influential to me, that is disgusting. That is horrific. That is evil on a level I cannot fathom or comprehend, because what is so important about the concept of revolutionary suicide is that it is completely voluntary. It is something that you choose to take. It's a burden that you take upon yourself.
And that Jonestown was absolutely not a voluntary process. It was at best a hoodwink of the people who ended up taking their own lives.
Right. It was involuntary. It was a manipulation. And that's not even what revolutionary suicide is. And that is what is so frustrating about this, and why I hate this fucking man so goddamn much, is he manipulated genuinely important revolutionary radical concepts to manipulate desperate people with genuine hope into accepting his dogma and his spirituality and his doctrine in order to manipulate them into self-destruction. It's heinous. It is horrific. It is evil on a level that I cannot fathom.
So getting back on track, the most evil thing I argue Jones did beyond tricking people into ending their own lives was that he recorded his people taking their own lives.
Yeah, and I have listened to that audio all the way through, and it is.
I haven't listened to it. From what I understand, it is a stomach wrenching experience to hear.
I don't remember a lot of like the actual dialogue or what the people themselves were saying, but something that will never ever leave me is the sounds of the children in the background who are screaming as they're being forced to drink the cyanide laced Kool-Aid flavor.
Remember, this was not entirely voluntary for most people.
Yeah, most of the people there, because you can hear in the recording, a lot of these people were arguing with him as it was happening that they didn't need to do this.
I would argue, even beyond the people who were arguing, it was coerced, even to the people who willingly did it.
Yeah.
The method of suicide was a mixture of Flavor Aid, as Derek mentioned at the beginning of the episode, and cyanide that was handed out to communities members to drink. Those who refused to drink were injected with cyanide via syringe. The crowd was surrounded by armed guards offering either death by the cyanide or the hands of the armed guards. The first to consume the poison were Relata Paul and her 1-year-old child. According to escaped temple member Odell Rhodes, the child's mouth was filled with poison using a syringe without a needle, and Paul then injected more poison into her mouth. According to Rhodes, after ingesting the poison, people were taking down a wooden walkway that led outside the pavilion. As parents watched their children perish from the poison, Rhodes described a scene of panic and confusion. He had many of the assembled temple members walked around like they were in a trance, and the majority quietly waited their turn to die. Over time, as more temple members perished, the guards themselves called in to die by poison.
And the entire time. And if you listen to the audio, one thing that you'll notice is when you listen to Jones himself, when he's speaking, he's basically preaching. He's giving a sermon as these people to these people as they're killing themselves, and some of them are yelling at him and asking him, like, what if we did this instead? What if we took this different direction? Or why do we have to do this? What's the justification? These kinds of things. As he's speaking back to them and as he's giving these sermons, you can hear his voice is slurred. And it really sounds like he's just loaded, like he's been drinking. Or he's been doing like he's had some coke or something. Like he does not sound sober as this is happening, which is something that another thing about it that really struck me.
I would argue, even if he wasn't on physical inhibitants, he might have been high on the power of it.
That is true too. Like I can't.
That works as good as actual drugs for some people. It will actually physically alter your mental state when you are on an act of that level. I don't know if we could scientifically quantitate that ethically. We definitely could not.
Yeah,
actually.
that is another thing too. It's like I can't imagine for. I don't want to call him a psychopath, but because I'm not qualified to diagnose him as such. But for somebody like him,
I as someone who's not authorized, I would make a hard argument that Jim Jones was.
Yeah, I would say there is something to that. But I have no doubt in my mind he got pleasure and satisfaction from expressing power. And
even if it wasn't a direct satisfaction like we typically think, there's no way he didn't get off on this, metaphorically speaking.
Yeah. To give the command with his own words and voice for an entire community of almost 1,000 people to volunteer to take their own lives, and they listen and they do it, and he's watching that, the endorphins that must have released, that power, that godlike power must have released in his brain, had to have had like some sort of like drug-like effect on him. I can't imagine that not happening.
Oh, 100%. Out of all the members of the People's Temple, only 85 members survived. Some had slipped away before the death ritual, One man hid at a ditch. One elderly woman hid in the dormitory, awaking to find everyone dead. 3 high-ranking members were assigned to transfer the assets of the church to the Soviet embassy and therefore escaped death. So they were the designated survivors.
Yeah, the Heaven's Gate had something like that too. Did you know that?
I didn't know this part. You want to know what's even beyond that? I'm sure most cults have a designated survivors if they're taking ritualistic suicide. They had a fucking basketball team, Derek, who was away after a game and survived because they were at a game.
God, that's weird fucking.
There were other random others who survived because they were away on business.
Sorry, real quick. I'm really sorry for interjecting again. I wanted to say something about Heaven's Gate one more time. I'll be quick about it. Heaven's Gate, they had designated survivors too. They had 2 that were. Heaven's Gate had 2 people, 1 man, 1 woman, that were told to that didn't participate in their collective suicide, because they were specifically told that after the rest of Heaven's Gate was gone, they were in charge of running their propaganda.
They were worried about propaganda after the.
Yeah, and so their main job was to print literature to distribute, and also to run the Heaven's Gate website.
I remember about the Heaven's Gate website being active after.
And fun fact, one of them is still alive, and he is still running the website. The website's still up.
I remember the website was still active. I didn't know he was still alive.
Yeah, he's still alive, and he's still keeping the website up. And it has not changed a single bit. It has not been updated since the 90s.
That does not surprise me. Following the murder-suicide, there were 909 deaths. 3 of his sons survived. Stephen, Jim Jr., and Tim Jones. They were away with the basketball team. During the events, the 3 brothers drove to the U.S. Embassy to alert authorities of the Guyanese soldiers that refused to let them in after hearing about the shootings. There was an unrelated shooting. Later, the 3 returned to the Heaven's Temple. Sorry, you got me fucked up because, I'm drunk. You're fine. The 3 returned to the temple's headquarters in Georgetown to find the body of Sharon Ambos and her 3 children, Leanne, Christina, and Martin. Later, the Guyanese military arrived in Jonestown to find the dead.
Oh, man. Can you imagine being one of those soldiers?
At the very least, I'd be drunk for weeks on end, if not probably ending my own life after seeing that, Derek.
Yeah, that's not something that you just keep going on after you see that. That's the end of something in your life.
It would be a turning point for me, at the very least. The U.S. military airlifted the bodies. Member of the basketball team were taken to identify the bodies. After returning to the U.S., Jim Jones Jr. was placed under police surveillance for several months while he lived with his older sister Suzanne, who had already turned against the temple. John Victor Stowen, at the time of her death, Marceline, Jones's wife, directed that the assets be given to the Communist Party of the Soviet Union. The People's Temple secretary had already made arrangements for $7.3 million. You want to take a stab at how much that's worth today in 2020 dollars?
Somewhere closing in on $100 million.
You're way off, brother. $29 million in 2020 dollars in the temple's fund be transferred to the Soviet embassy in Guyana. Most of the money was held in foreign banks and was transferred electronically. But 680,000, about $2.904 million and $97 in 2020 money was held in cash, and three couriers were hired to transport the cash to the Soviets. The couriers were arrested before reaching their destination and claimed to have hidden most of the money.
You know, the great last final cosmic fuck you to Jim Jones was that money was probably spent on military assets that the Soviet Union then would go on to either waste in Afghanistan, or would survive long enough to be sold off by a bunch of emerging oligarchs when the Soviet Union collapsed in 91.
Following this, Jim Jones was like basically forever remembered in the social zeitgeist. I'm going to summarize this down because like Jim Jones is known for a lot, because like he's known as like one of the epitomes, along with Heaven's Gate and a bunch of other cults like Waco, which, as much as we want to argue Waco was definitely a cult, it probably wasn't doing as bad as things as we like to think. That was probably mostly the U.S. government covering their tracks.
Yeah. Branch Davidian they were kind of benign as far as cults go. They weren't good, but definitely weren't like a death cult. They were just a very...
Oh, definitely. A lot of the shit that we associate bad with Waco is mostly because of the U.S. government. They were known... they spawned the term drinking the Kool-Aid, which, beyond just being known as like a way of saying, oh, you're dying, it's a way of saying you've bought into someone's philosophy or their rhetoric. Any thoughts before we go, Derek?
No, just a big pillar of socialist and communist thought, which many of the people, no less Jim Jones himself, seem to have forgotten, is Karl Marx himself said it best: ruthless criticism of all that exists. Never take...
Criticize everything. I don't know the exact thing you're referencing from Marx, but nothing is above reproach. Criticize everything. Criticize yourself.
Yeah. Criticize everything that you are told. Critically analyze everything that you personally believe, and everything that anybody is trying to sell you. Because if you truly critically analyze everything, then whatever you are left satisfied with, whatever satisfies your conditions for being the truth, is probably going to end up being a lot safer than whatever you take at face value. And that is how you avoid falling into the trap of... Because that's something that I really need to emphasize, is that anybody, no matter how rational or reasonable you might be as a person, anybody is susceptible to manipulation in like a cult-like sort of situation.
It doesn't matter how smart you are susceptible to being manipulated.
Yeah, some of these cults that emerged in like the 70s, 80s, 90s, they were filled with like professionals, like doctors and lawyers and people with like higher education, people who reasonably had like what we would consider like satisfactory sort of critical thinking skills as a necessity for the professions that they chose, and they were still targeted for manipulation by these cults, and they were still dragged in because they are insidious. These methods of control that cults utilize are insidious, and they do not make distinctions. And so the best way to protect yourself
deprogram yourself. No one expects themselves to be in a cult, because you don't realize you're in a cult until it's too late. Cults deprogram you. They essentially remove your sense of community. They remove you from any family, any friends, and basically make you, the only sense of worth you have is within the cult. And they make it so you can't think outside of the cult. I don't blame anyone who gets caught in a cult, because cults, even at the baseline that aren't sophisticated, take some very, very sophisticated psychology, and even if they're not conscious of using it, and manipulated you into doing things you otherwise would never do.
Yeah, and so yeah, that's my takeaway is protect yourself, think critically, don't believe anything you hear at face value. It ruthlessly criticize even your most deeply held beliefs.
Always reevaluate your deeply held beliefs, because you might be thinking of things that you might be holding beliefs that you've never reevaluated, and you've gained new beliefs that you're not even consciously aware of that contradict them. I've done that multiple times, and it's hard to reevaluate and reassess your new beliefs. So, Derek, now that we've come to the end of the episode, where can they find you on social media?
They can find me at Twitter. They can find me on Twitter at Visigoth. The first I is a 1, the O is a 0. They can find me on Blue Sky at Visigoth. The first I is just a regular I. The O is 0. Tim, where can they find you and all of the episode or all of the podcast stuff?
So they can find me at both Blue Sky and Twitter at Tim, aka Otis. And they can find the podcast on Facebook and Instagram at the Alexander Society Pod. And then Twitter and Blue Sky at Alex Society Pod. And then if they want to listen to some of our outtakes and our beer reviews of the drinks we're having on the podcast, they can find us on Alexander Society on TikTok. And if they've enjoyed what they've heard today, they can find us on their streaming platform of choice. And we hope they give us a rate and review so we can catch the algorithm gods for continued support. And we'll see them next time.
Bye.